Okay, sorry, I was going to say that so that we can move quickly. I'm looking at the time and I'm realizing that we've got very little time left. Let's move into the realm of some of the things that people are saying on Twitter. There is a gentleman, Dele Momo, who is on Twitter, who says, what effort has the state government made in securing the indigents from Fulani outlaws? Everyone is waiting on the government. Let's expand that statement into the sphere of what's the role of state governors when you say that, oh, some state governors are not dealing with Fulani outlaws, and then you also say there is no state police, and then you also look at the issue of some state governments saying that they actually have no power to control the security apparatus within their state. So if they're powerless about it, why should we expect them to do anything about Boko Haram or any issue of insecurity?
Again, I think we need to be very precise in analyzing even the reactions before we get sidetracked by red herrings. We need to understand that a lot of the reactions you're going to see on Twitter, you're going to see on Facebook and all those places, are the reactions of people who have been terrorized and traumatized. You need to understand that once the instrument of terror begins to succeed, the people behind the thinking can actually predict the reactions like this one. And the truth is that while you are still, straining at gnats, you will end up swallowing an elephant. So I'm going to say to you that for people who want a solution to this, we must listen to people's reactions, but we must also realize that the average person is not trained in security. The average person doesn't have the background to handle this kind of stress. And when stress reaches a point, a lot of people are just going to be coming up with questions, with digressions. I think from what he has said earlier on, the best thing we can tell the nation right now is that somebody needs to talk to the president and look him in the face and let him know that the buck stops at his table. Whether we talk about lieutenants or not, the buck stops. History will either record him as the best president Nigeria ever had or the very worst. Now, it may not be fair what his judgment is at the end of the day, but he happens to be the one on the seat for now. Daladier and Chamberlain went to Munich, a similar operation like this one, went to Munich to meet with Adolf Hitler. And they came back to cheering crowds in France and in Britain, saying, oh, we want peace for our generation. A few months later, bombs were raining down on Britain. And as he mentioned, Churchill stepped up to the plate. So the truth right now is that our president needs to get his eyes off politics, because history will be very unkind to him if he does not sit down right now, look at what is happening on the table, take appropriate measures, not us going down to the level of running after every alarm by people who are already traumatized. In fact, there needs to be a study on the effect of terror on the populace. In fact, the president needs to also understand that when it comes to handling the people, he has mentioned something already. Like I said, we're not going to solve the problem sitting down in front of TV cameras over 15 or 30 minutes for people who plan against you for 50 years. So the truth is this: the military inheritance of blanketing information falsification only helps to destroy a nation.
Okay, can we shift back to the state and what they are capable of doing under the current circumstance? Because we have seen a situation where there are vultures feeding on human beings in the northeast, especially in a place like in Borno State. And that is not because the governor of the state is not doing anything. He has made it clear that he has spent billions of naira on buying equipment and vehicles for the army. He has spent so much money supporting the police, but he hasn't got the power to give them direct instruction and say, this is where I need you to go. Goza was attacked many weeks ago or a few weeks ago, and he didn't have the authority to say, okay, this is what has happened in Goza. I, as the person who is as the chief security officer of the state, I am deploying 1,000 or 2,000 soldiers to this area, so surround it. Everybody that decimated and destroyed lives in Goza, I want them arrested. He hasn't got that authority. So what do we do?
Governor Jang, if you remember, go back to Plateau State a few years ago, said the same thing when the trouble started in Plateau State. And what we are all referring to here, and I mean the white elephant in the room, is the federal structure of the Nigerian police force, where we have an apex structure where everybody reports only to one man. Now, of course, we know that when it comes to terrorism, this is not going to help us. This is going to hurt us, because all the Boko Haram has to do is to infiltrate the pyramid. If possible, if Boko Haram can get the Inspector General of Police to be a loyalist and to be one of them and a sympathizer to them, then the entire structure is in trouble. If they can get his number 2 or number 3 or number 4, and these are not impossibilities, we are dealing with a very intelligent foe. So again, what I'm trying to point out to you, sir, is that there's nothing that a state governor, as it were, on his own is going to do outside of, quote, the law, except to exploit it, depending on which side of the fence his sentiments really lie. And we're pointing out that what really needs to be done has to start from the center. Now, the reason why we advocate for a state of war to be declared is because there are sweeping powers that come to a decisive precedent when a state of war has been declared. So even the issue of local police, state police, and all that, let me put this thing in a nutshell. In 3 months, if the president of Nigeria has not done anything decisive, the office will eject him. In the next 3 months, if he has not done something decisive beyond, lip service and all the talk that we have heard so far, events will put together things, because we are talking, like he has said, he has done a lot of study in counter-terrorism. I've been on this for 14 years. Now, the thing I want to nail down for us is that there are so many things that we can actually predict ahead. It's not as if these things don't have a pattern. They have a pattern. They're not things to talk about on a television set, as it were. But the only caveat that I think I need to place here, the caution that we need to place here, is this. Right now, there are some thinkers across the globe who are considering the fact that if Nigeria becomes the next Afghanistan, it will buy time and peace for some other countries.
Okay. On that note, let me ask you the same question, Dari. What do the state governments need to do on the issue of terrorism, on the issue of insecurity? We need to have an idea. It is dividing Nigeria, because some people on the political end of on one extreme, they're saying that the state government are not doing enough. On the other side, the state government are saying we are powerless here because we don't have the security apparatus at our beck and call, so we cannot take any specific action. A case in hand, Goza, Biu, Chibok, a number of other places, Mubi in Adamawa, and so on. The governor hasn't got the authority to give direct instruction, as if he's a commander-in-chief of any armed forces or the police, to give them direct instruction and say, this has just happened in a community in my state. I need you to surround, lock it down. I need 5,000 men to do this specific work and capture every single one of them, ransack the place. They don't have such authority. So what do we do?
Well, Mr. Thompson just mentioned something about Plateau State. That's what I want to say, Plateau State model. You know, in the last 2 years, the spate of violence in Plateau State reduced because President Jang got approval from President to start Operation Rainbow, and he put it under the supervision of Air Force Marshal Dambaba. And Operation Rainbow is not only using law enforcement and just military approach. They were using political approach also. They were able to use all the traditional rulers. They were able to recruit young men who give them real-time intelligence. You know, the governors, they have been saying, okay, we don't have power to control police. We don't have power to do it, but there are some other things they can do. I've mentioned 5 tools, which of course, number 1 is political. Let us look at Lagos State model also. For so long time, you can see, despite the fact that Governor Fashola happens to be APC, governor, but you can see that in terms of security, supporting police, supporting different small security. He has been able to curtail, control security to some extent. Now, another thing is that it's important for all our governors to develop a kind of good relationship with the president. And the reason I said the president must show leadership, because you cannot be insulting the president and at the same time you want to go and sit down with him